We now move to our next presenter, Dr. Raymond Chandra Vinata. He is the Director of Research and Business Development at Dexa Medica. Dr. Raymond, the time is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Shanti. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we are here together in the meeting, very important meeting on the G20 in terms of the future health sector, the healthcare working group dialogue of the G20. So today I'll be representing the industry as well as our scientists working on the green pharmacy, which is I'm looking into the ecological perspective. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, we will have a new refreshed understanding about how green pharmacy can actually increases not only resilience of the country, but also the prosper of the medication of the future. So let me start with the ecology. The ecology, as we know, is actually is interaction and relationship between human and environment. Obviously, we live side to another with animals, plants, and things like that. That will actually allow us to do develop an ecosystem within our Earth. And then if you look into the on the left hand side, you will see that individual over there I put into animal, but actually this also pertains to humans. Individuals that collect together becomes population. A lot of population becomes community, and those community will develop a network of ecosystem, in which that ecosystem will actually enrich and part of the biosphere. Now we have to understand that this our interaction with ecosystem, especially with our nature and our environmental, has been going on since the dawn of the century, even the history of humankind. So we should not neglect that we actually are actually dependent upon each other, and we cannot neglect that we have to also to take care of our ecosystem, ecology, and our biosphere. This is why green pharmacy is very important in our life, because as we human being becomes more cultured, we gather a lot of knowledge, we gathered a lot of technology, which allow us to develop a social system based on technology, based on the knowledge, our intelligence, and the whole population. This is what interaction is needed in the ecological system, interaction with the ecosystem, which we know it's actually going to the network within itself, as we have spoken before. So it's very important that we respect our environment. It's very important that we respect our ecology so that we can actually, as a human species, we live long enough in this earth, which is we love, and also that allow us to gather many of the earth product system that can be used into the social system of our living, in the ecosystem of our social life as a human being. Now, one of those beneficial things in which we can gather is plants. As you know, plants are anywhere. Like a country like Indonesia has many different plants, many different medicinal plants that can be gathered into green pharmacy. This is very important because as we plant emerge to be one of our ecosystem, it enhances our life. For example, we can get drugs from the plants. Vincristine, for example, as you can see here. Also, this is a plant material that can be used as an oncology drug, and so many other that we can be used as a supplement in everyday's day-to-day living. So plants is very, very important part of our ecosystem, which allow us to grow and live as human being in a very, very good ways, which is in harmonizing in nature with our ecosystem. So in order to do that, we have to understand that green pharmacy is coming from our plants is actually a divine of bioactive ingredients. This green pharmacy consists a lot of substances, which will have, which will allow us to have a pharmacodynamic kind of effect on our body. Also, the influence of the gene and protein expression in main secondary constituents. I remember that our Menkes, our Indonesian Menteri Kesehatan, which is the health Minister of Health, allow us now to think that we can not only think about the therapeutic, but also looking into the genomics of our living being, of our patients. Now, this green pharmacy also has the influence on the gene expression, mainly because of it has a lot of ingredients within the green pharmacy itself. So when we define green pharmacy, it's actually substances can have a lot of effects on our body, and hence it have therapeutics and health effects on our body. And if you go further, actually the green pharmacy is actually can be defined as a compound that will allow us to have even on the effect of the genomic as well as proteomic. This is a method, this is a system that we can not only in the therapeutic area of the biological as well as the molecules. Now we go into not only physiology, but we go further into the molecular of diseases and patients. So the green pharmacy allow us to do that because it has effect on the DNA, RNA, protein, and also metabolism of the human body. For example, if you have a pathophysiology condition, you can reverse that using the green pharmacy into the different transcription of the gene and so on to become well. Now, we are very in the midst of the prevention medicine. We are in the midst of the correct conversion of the conventional to functional medicine. What is a functional medicine? Functional medicine has to be one that's health-oriented, patient-centered, holistic. Obviously, we have to see the patient as a whole point of view, not only one area, reductionism, in which we only see the liver, we see the heart, we see the lungs, and so on. But we have to see the human body is holistic. And then we want to show the preventative approach. So in this functional medicine, we go into prevention instead of only curing of certain diseases. And with the green pharmacy and natural medicine, it is possible to do this. It's very easy because green pharmacy, we can target certain gene and protein, and obviously the approach would be very individualized. So if you look into the precision medicine now, that's being developed into the biological product, now green pharmacy can also fit into that category. And obviously, there's publications, a lot of publications of green pharmacy now available on the internet, in the libraries, as well as journal being published every day. This will enhance our understanding on the green pharmacy, and obviously the effect, and we can learn some more of the effects of the green pharmacy, which we actually tend to neglect because it's coming natural, so it's not making a good effect. It does not have a good therapeutic effect, so not that way, because all these publications can suggest that green pharmacy is not inferior to the typical pharmaceutical. And many of those green pharmacy actually can be used. Many parts of the typical plant, for example, from the root, from the bark, from fruit, but many of these green pharmacies actually coming from the leaf as well as the root. And this publication shows that we have a lot of these leaf and roots even in the developing countries such as Indonesia or other surrounding countries that we can develop potentially further be used in the healthcare sector as a green pharmacy. Now, obviously, in order to be modern, a green pharmacy has to go through a modern discovery process. You cannot go to a plant, typical plant, and traditionally use a certain indication. We cannot assume that. We have to use some molecular biology technique. We have to use some drug discovery technique to make sure that the green pharmacy will allow us to develop medication of the future, even though it's coming from plant, coming from the nature, but yet we have to develop certain ways that make sure us that the green pharmacy can be accepted as a modern therapy, modern therapeutic value, modern therapeutic drugs. In such a way, not only we're doing from the beginning, which is first in the beginning, right from the beginning, but also we have to gather the data in terms of the clinical trial. The randomized clinical trial, which is control versus active product or versus placebo, has to be done to make sure that the green pharmacy will conform to the international category of drugs. In the future, the green pharmacy should make up majority of drugs that has in a formularium, national formulary of a country. This is our dream, but also it can be done if the government and the private sector and then the academia sector work hand in hand to make this possible. Because the green pharmacy is a very good proposal for many countries. Now we know that conventional medicine has been very, very useful in terms of therapeutics of human beings, in terms of therapeutics of patients. As you can see here, it's a recent data suggesting that yes, many of those burden of diseases can be broken down or even lowered down. Burden of the disease can be remedied by conventional medicine. As you can see here, this if you look into the defined daily dose versus the disability adjusted life year, you can see many of this metabolic disease or even progressive disease and like cardiovascular, oncology, mental disorder, diabetes, and things like that can be remedied by conventional medicine. But as such, conventional medicine is now the mainstream medicine being used in the healthcare sector. But yet we tend to forget that this conventional medicines, majority coming from the small molecule, also have risk on the ecology. Because why? Because the nature of the conventional medicine, which can go, from the R&D manufacturing to distribution, consumption, to the waste management, will have possible releases on also human impact on the environment. Now, to dwell further on this, we know that the human exposure routes to the medicinal product has been documented many ways. I will show you what's happening in India, for example, in Hyderabad, also in the backyard of Jakarta. Essentially, the human pharmacy, which is taken by people, by the patients, this is pharmaceutical from the small molecules, also can contaminate drinking water. Also, drinking water can go to the sewer, to the wastewater. And then we know that there are so many pharmaceuticals also accumulated in the wastewater or even in the sea, in the surrounding, an island surrounding area of a typical urban area. Now, this is the more technical way. It can go the medicinal product, the conventional medicine from human use or even animal use can go to the surface, even surface water, groundwater, and it can contaminate drinking water. Yeah. Now, this is happening, for example, the case study as I've alluded earlier, this is happening in Hyderabad. Hyderabad is actually 50% of India's export drugs coming from. Approximately 170 companies operating the area. They all produce generic drugs or even API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. So it's been studied in the area that the areas can be contaminated. The environment of the area of Hyderabad can be contaminated by the bulk of drug manufacturing facility and also nearby areas, nearby villages, which people live. For example, this Patancheru Bolaram zone, contaminated by antimicrobial. In this case, for example, they use a lot of antimicrobial, like, for example, azithromycin, could be amoxicillin, could be any of the antibiotics. So essentially, and then also they found 95% of contained waterly high levels of bacteria and fungal resistant to antibiotic drugs. Now, this is in India. It is very, very important that we have to make sure that the environment in which we are producing the conventional medicine, it has to be protected so that it doesn't contaminate the people. So ecology will not be disaster if that is what's happening. And as in the case of Hyderabad in India, we need to make sure that countries in which they will produce the API will have to have containment of this particular problem for conventional medicine. Now, this is not only happening in India, but also in our backyard, the backyard of the Teluk Jakarta. Also recently we found the concentration of paracetamol in the Jakarta Bay, for example. And in next study, people also find out that it's not only paracetamol is contaminating Indonesian soil, but oxatetracycline, sulfametaxol, trimetrophin, and also detected in the aquaculture sites in Java, Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming more and more that we have seen the pharmaceutical landfill, pharmaceutical in the water sewage, which we have not studied in this country, in Indonesia. But I think if we have studied, we will see there are more and more of this happening in our backyard in Indonesia and maybe surrounding countries in Indonesia. So that's why if you look into the earlier speakers alluded that the also antimicrobial resistance is also important, because if the conventional medicine goes into sewer, obviously all the bacteria will be resistant, and some of the resistant bacteria will get into the patients, it will get into our body. That will increase the mortality rate. As suggested by the recent studies, by 2020, 10 million people of antimicrobial death due to antimicrobial resistance. And this is actually similar to the death rate of cancer, similar to even higher than diabetes, diarrheal disease, or even road traffic accidents. Very menacingly, very important that we need to put attention into the antimicrobial resistance, not because people are taking a lot of antibiotics only, but also the antibiotics that were taken by people will be excreted and contaminate the whole system, the ecosystem of the ecology of a whole particular country. And this is where green pharmacy can play a role. Green pharmacy is not only commercially and environmentally friendly, but also the green pharmacy actually can absorb more greenhouse. It can get rid of the carbon. Why? Because we plant more plants, and plants actually take off the carbon dioxide. So not only that, when we into the, this is not only synthetic from nature, absorb the greenhouses, and also green pharmacy consists only on say carbonic material, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphate, and things like that. So essentially also the waste product, the green pharmacy, after we do the production, can be mixed with the farmyard manure, becomes the EFF, which is environmentally friendly fertilizers. Let's not forget that this actually the waste product of the green pharmacy, after they being produced in a typical factory, we can recycle them into the soil, into our ecosystem, into the environmentally friendly fertilizers, and hence allowing the growth of many other plants, many other trees, which will bring the richness of the ecosystem of certain area. And hence the environmentally friendly fertilizers do not increase the NO emissions. It might increase the organic matter. It will adjust the soil pH so that beneficial bacteria only will grow within that particular soil. And also, obviously, it will improve the water retention, water holding capacity, and the whole thing making our living being, our ecosystem much more healthy. This is what we need to understand. We need to create the green pharmacy, because it will actually impact the human being very well. Versus conventional with pharmacy, in which you saw earlier the impact, the environmental impact to the conventional pharmacy. If we plant more plants, medicinal, it will create a betterment of the human species, of human race. Now, our previous speaker also alluded that we are in the living in the midst of COVID-19. Obviously, the supply chains will be broken somehow because of the COVID-19, and in some countries also not able to export some of the raw materials which we use. But also recently, the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia also chaos for the global supply chain. If the green pharmacy is being protected, if the green pharmacy is being making it into a priority within one country, we don't think that the supply crisis, because the availability of raw materials in the country, we do not have to export. We don't have to import of those raw materials. In fact, we have supply, and every time and anytime, if we could put an economic chain value in which green pharmacy can add to the country, we actually are helping the growers. We are helping the sustainability of the growing system of the farmers of a country. They can provide a good supply chain of raw materials into the green pharmaceutical supply chain system within one country. So with the green pharmacy, we can potentially avoid many of these issues in terms of the global supply chains. And at the end, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my talk that green pharmacy is an agenda that we need to think about. The green pharmacy actually can protect a country from a supply issue, from the environmental issue, from the problem of the healthcare. The green pharmacy actually is there only when we realize and we put a lot of agenda, we put a lot of action into it, then the country can become independent, having a good environment system, ecological system based on its production system. Also, it will increases the betterment of the life of our growers and farmers, so that we will be independent in terms of the API, active materials coming from our green pharmacy of a country. And that actually benefits not only the provider, but also the patients, especially when it's put into national formulary. Because if you put into national formulary, the whole citizen will be able to get the benefits of the green pharmacy, which will be put by the, for example, by the Ministry of Health. And then the patients will get green pharmacy, which is grown in that particular country. For example, in Indonesia, the patient will be getting beneficial green pharmacy product from Indonesia, which will be not only beneficial for the healthcare, but also for the environment. And we all grow happy together as human beings, as patients here in Indonesia. Thank you very much for your attention for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Raymond. I think that is very insightful and a totally different outlook on ensuring sustainable healthcare in Indonesia.